Woodes Rogers offers to trade the jewels for Jack Rackham's life, though the Spanish want something else. And one ex-pirate gets what's coming to him. Oh, poor Mr. Squishied-Face. It's Black Sails, Season 3, Episode 7, 25. Alright, spoilers ahead, just so you've been warned. Alright, we've got another really chunky, really nice episode of Black Sails. A lot of great pirate action, a lot of evolution of characters going on. Now let's start off with back at the slave community, where Flint is proposing his plan to use the jewels to sucker Woodes Rogers and the rest of the Navy fleet into a battle, but a battle on Flint's terms where they can have the advantage. And it's a really nice scene. Once she sort of sends everyone away and has a discussion with Flint, Mrs. Scott really gets to show the strength of her character. She really poignantly asks a lot of important questions to Flint about his strategy, about the potential reaction that the English could have, and really what his goal is in setting all of this up. What kind of guarantees can he offer her for the protection of her people? She knows this is an important battle, but she wants to be sure she's not rushing into anything. And I really bring this up because I think it's a really well-crafted scene, illustrating, again, very strong female characters, which this show's done a great job with doing. I mean, with Max, with Eleanor Guthrie, with Anne, with Miranda, we've got a lot of very strong, very smart female characters. And Mrs. Scott is not any different. And I really think it shows her strength and the reason why she's the leader. It's not just because she is Mr. Scott's wife and she has, you know, the reign over this particular community. She really is the one in charge, and that's something that Scott had brought out. Is while he can advise, she is the one in charge. And she really shows it's not just for her position, but her intelligence and her perception of things. And I'm really glad the show keeps doing that with their female characters. Now back on Nassau, we find out that Jack, unlike what Anne's been told, isn't actually being tortured. And Woodes is illustrating a really smart approach on this. One, he's actually being quite reasonable with how he is presenting everything, with his position and how he's dealing with everything else. He doesn't need to kill Jack. He doesn't want to upset the street. He really wants Nassau to work. In order to do that, he knows that he has to keep the pirates, the people there, on his side. They need to believe that what he says is true. So he's willing to just exchange the gold for Jack and try and move on from there. And I really like the scene because, again, establishing Woodes' reasonableness, and that's important for later on, really as a poignant balance out with his scene with Flint later on in the episode. But unfortunately for Woodes, that's not going to be the end of it. However much he really wants to make this clean and really keep everybody happy, the Spanish have other plans. Specifically, not only do they want the gold, they want Jack as well. They are angry. The masters of Spain are angry. And they really want a revenge of sort. They were embarrassed. This is very petty, upper crust, aristocratic, men in power type kind of things. And of course that's going to complicate everybody's life. So not only do they want the gold, they want Jack as well. Which really puts Woodes in a precarious position because, one, he has to go against his word. Anne Bonny is not going to like it. Anne is not somebody you really want to upset. But mostly, he does not want the street, as they put it, to be upset. They don't want to find out that they have been betrayed, that somebody who is one of their own has been given away to the Spanish. That's going to put Woodes in a very precarious position. But he really doesn't have a choice. If he doesn't send them along, Spain is still going to send the fleet and burn Nassau down. So he is really in a tough position. Now this is going to complicate Flint's plan a bit because, again, the plan that he, Silver, and Vane have come up with is to get to Anne first, get the jewels, and use that as bait. But they need men. They don't have enough men. They also need supplies, and all of those are located on Nassau. And this preps up one of the best scenes of the episode. And it really starts back on the ship, where there's discussion about should Flint go on board, and Bones says, no, Flint, you shouldn't. Any good ghost story I know never starts out with the ghost introducing himself. I love that. But he puts out that really we need someone else to go in and to weave this tale, to start the legend going on amongst the pirates, to raise them to come down to the beach to meet up with Flint and his crew so they can have a larger group for the eventual battle. And he picks Silver. He says Silver is the one that should do this. And there is a beautiful moment, and Tom Hopper really have to give it up to him for portraying this sort of shift of emotion, and for the director as well, for the way that he had framed it. Because once Silver accepts that, he really becomes another person, and you can see sort of the ghost, the specter, the image of Flint sort of melding in with him when he says, you know, go ahead, tell them to ready the longboats, I'll leave the party. And it's just that sort of side bit where he steps away from the camera and you see Tom Hopper, you see Bones behind him, and that look on his face really conveys the, oh my God, what have I done? Like he just realizes, I mean, he knows Silver is the silver-tongued devil. You know, he knows that he can speak and he can really convince people to come over. But as he embraced that sound, just the sound that Luke Arnold, that Silver made when he says, I'll lead the party, and the look on Billy Bones' face is just like he suddenly realized he might have just made a horrible mistake suggesting this. And it gets bigger, because once he walks into the bar, he owns it. It is a beautifully staged scene. And I love the fact that they integrate the ledgers that they have, that they've been using for all of the pardons. As soon as Silver walks in and he just sees this and he's like, hey, I've got a big book that's got a list of all the traitors here. Slam, I'm going to take this with me. Just lays out the tale that Flint isn't dead anymore. And what everybody there owns and the promises they had made. He owns the room, and I think really instills that terror within, and almost walks out cleanly. Until Mr. Dufresne decides to step in. Now, of all the pirates in Nassau, I think Dufresne deserves the most ire, the most focus of anger from Flint, from Silver, and the rest of the Walrus crew. I mean, he was part of their crew, and he was just a meek little bookkeeper back in season 1. And then he was convinced that Billy had to pull him up onto that raid, and then he, sort of was baptism in blood. And he became part of the crew and got a little bit of respect. But then he was also the first one to turn on everybody just for the pardons. And he was the one that pulled in Hornigold and eventually went in and got Guthrie. And they were the one that were chasing him into the storm, which in the beginning of this season, which created this whole mess of them being caught in the doldrums and being captured by the slave community. So really, if anybody deserves the focus ire of Silver, it is Dufresne, as he tries to just throw out his blood. Silver, oh, you're not so big. And Silver just knocks him down. And that is why he shall ever forth be known as Mr. Squishy-Face. See his squishy face. He goes pop, 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 pop. It's the traitorous man with the squishy face. Pop, 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 pop. Just a beautiful, nasty sequence. I mean, totally deserved. Beautifully done, and you could just see that intensity on Silver's face as he does it. Obviously, the pain in his stump, bashing that down, that is not a comfortable feeling, I can tell you that. But just a beautiful sequence, and you can see that, especially as it goes later on when he meets up with Flint, and Flint can recognize that look. And he asks him, how are you? And he says, well, I always thought when you were going through this stuff, you were angry and it was upset and this, but Never realized how good this could feel. And again, you see that transition of Silver from who he was, slowly morphing into the character that Flint himself will eventually fear. So we have the fear of the devil in all of the pirates. Woods has to figure out a way to keep them from going down, but not let anybody embarrassed. And it leads to that beautiful other sequence where we have Woods waiting on the beach for Flint and their great little conversation. And Woods throws out there quite quickly that he knows about Tom Hamilton and Miranda and Arthur Ashe and the plan to establish pardons for the pirates. And established himself, I am who you were, which is a great throwback to the scene when Flint was talking with Silver back in the jail in the slave community, and he was saying exactly the same things. Am I the villain? Isn't this exactly what it is that I wanted? Those exact same thoughts were going through his head. Now Flint has a response. Now Flint sees what it is, that yes, that was supposed to be just the beginning. And we tried to present this, and they killed Tom. And then we tried to present this to Arthur Ashe, and he killed Miranda. He is tired of asking England for things. The same thing that he had thrown out with the slave community with Mrs. Scott, the same discussion that they have had. I am tired of asking things from England. Want you to leave. Get out of my home. And from there, of course, Woods throws the gauntlet back down. Fine. No more pardon. Any pirate caught's going to be assumed to be part of your crew. Capital crime. There you go. And so we set up the two opposing forces for the upcoming battle. A battle which Woods is probably going to have some difficulty fighting, considering that his men are starting to fall sick by the wayside. That's what happens. They're coming from England over to the Americas. Whole new batch of bacterias and viruses and sicknesses that their body is not used to. They don't have an immune system for. And it gives that little scene between Woods and Eleanor there as well in bed, where he is realizing she is always part of the island, and she every time he sees her, he's going to be reminded of her. And I'm not sure if her sale of like, no, I'm with you, really is. I mean, Eleanor does have a history. That's what she brought up. She has a history of backstabbing people. Is she setting him up? And I only ask that because she ran to his bed right after Max told her what the men were saying, what the British soldiers were saying. Not beforehand, even though he had his little slips of, oh, I might be falling in love with you. I mean, just little things like that. It wasn't until she knew that she threw himself in and then specifically brought up, you don't need to be afraid of me. I'm not going, what I told you before, that's not going to be me. Is she playing the long con on that? Is she telling the truth? That's going to have to be something that we will find out, and probably soon. We've got Anne back on board. They found out the betrayal. And now, in a brilliant little move, they had to give up the gold, lull them into that false sense of security, because they have the intelligence of where they're going to grab Jack, grab the jewels, and meet up with the Spanish ship. So if they can intercept them, they will have the money, they will have Jack, they will have Anne, and they will have an island very upset that Woods was about to give up one of their own to the Spanish. And I think that's what's going to rally a lot more of the ex-pirates back to piracy. But for that, we're going to have to wait until next week. Please press like if you enjoyed my little rant and rambling today. Subscribe, just press that little button. You can come back every week. We do this show, several other shows. S.H.I.E.L.D. comes back. Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. comes back this week. A lot of stuff going on, barreling in towards summer. We're going to do movies. It's going to be a blast. Hit that subscribe button and you won't miss a thing. Comments, like it, don't like it, write it down in the section below. I always respond, and I really do appreciate everything you guys have to say. And that is it. I am D, and I am out of here. I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.